It's time, so I think we can go ahead and start. Hopefully, everyone is joined. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Spring 2026 webinars. I'm Lorna Peters. I'm the water quality intern for NRPC, and I run the outreach for the Franklin County Stormwater Collaborative. And we're super excited to have Adam McCullough as our presenter tonight to talk about tree health. Adam's the Vermont State Urban Forester, and he works with the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program. Just a little bit about Adam's experience. He worked as the first city arborist for Montpelier. And if you're interested in learning more about what he does after this presentation, I can add the urban forester column that Adam puts out in the chat. We're going to talk about tree health and the stormwater of trees in stormwater reduction or importance of trees. And yeah, this meeting is being recorded, so if you can just please keep your mics off until the Q&A section. And if you want to revisit it or watch past webinars, I'll also add the link to our webpage in the chat. Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat and we can visit them at the end. And yeah, I think that's all I have. So, Adam, if you want to start, I think you should be able to share your screen.
Oh yeah, that's good. Thank you, Lorna. I appreciate the introduction there. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate you sharing your time. I know it's a big ask to be out here for an hour. Let me see what I can do about sharing a screen here. I've got a PowerPoint. Did that work?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. All right, we good? So again, thanks everybody for being here. So yes, I'm Adam McCullough, and I am an urban forester. So I do a bunch of different things, and a lot of the things that I do are really behind the scenes. But what I used to do is climb trees. That's me on the left. I do still climb, and that's really where my roots are in terms of tree understanding and tree work. Um, Coming to it from a perspective of someone who prunes trees and takes trees down. It really began when you're an arborist, you really focus on one tree at a time, and your management unit is one tree, which is different from a forester who looks at an entire stand of trees or an entire forest. An arborist looks at one tree, and it's a unique vantage point because you're so clued into that one limb you're standing on, or to that one piece of wood that you have to lower on a rope so that it doesn't hit something. You become really focused on one tree. Of course, that is a pretty limited perspective also. So as a private arborist, that's what I was really into. And then as a city arborist, that's when I really started to compare one tree to another and really started to see all the trees on the street and prioritize them. Which ones should I work on first? Which ones should I leave alone? Which ones should I take down? Which ones should I try to nurse back to health? And how much is it worth to try and save this tree versus starting over with and planting a new one? So that was an interesting zooming out moment for me in my career. And one of the other things that I experienced becoming city arborist of Montpelier is I would walk up to a tree and I would have my saw, my rope, and I would look at it and say, there is no pruning solution. I cannot prune this tree. All of the tree's problems are underground. This tree's issues are in the soil, in the roots, where there's nothing I can do about it. And that happens enough times, on the streets, uh, that I really started to become interested in how can I get, what are the designs, what are the technical solutions, what are the engineering solutions that are going to get these trees to be healthier. Um, so now, as an urban forester, I'm out there thinking about the urban forests all around the state, thinking about what are the sort of policies, funding ideas, rule changes, trainings, bigger sort of umbrella projects that I can try to take on to make it easier to get those kinds of engineered solutions into the ground for these trees and make sure more and more trees are successful out there. So my perspective has been zooming out, zooming out, zooming out, and at the same time, really moving underground. So let's go forwards and we'll start talking more about stormwater itself. But first, this is something I drew. You'll see a lot of my drawings in this presentation. Usually when I'm trying to make a presentation, I'll search the internet for a few minutes to see if I can find the picture I want. And then if I can't, I just draw it myself, and which I find very fun. But my handwriting, I've been told, is a little hard. But what we're going to do is look at these. These are the benefits of trees. And, to me, trees are just good. Trees are simply good. I shouldn't have to explain that trees are good, and yet I do. And when there's ever a moment in your career, in your life, when you're going out there to try and get somebody to plant a tree get permission to plant a tree, some of these arguments that you see on this slide might be helpful to you when you're trying to make the case for planting another tree. And that's why I share it. So, yeah, so up at the top, you'll see that the rain coming down, it hits the tree, and that's something we're going to talk a lot about right now. But the benefit of reducing the amount of stormwater coming to the ground is a tremendous one, and it has quite an impact on the general population to reduce floods and to reduce strain on infrastructure. Trees also absorb and store CO2, and that fights climate change. So the tree itself is made of CO2. Wood is made of CO2. It is the living tree itself, pound for pound. That wood came out of the air and became a tree. You also will see increased property values near trees, and that's actually significant for a lot of reasons. You'll see higher sale prices when real estate changes hands based on trees, especially well cared for trees. And if you're in a municipal situation and you need to fund your entire city, increasing the general property value around the city can help generate more revenue. So we have some shade right here coming from this tree. The shade from trees is a massive, massive, massive benefit from them. It cools the area surrounding the tree, but it also cools the buildings surrounding the tree. So the building that needs to be cooled in the summer, and that is a massive energy savings. And that is a huge reason, huge part of how trees help us fight climate change also. So they're storing that CO2, they're sucking up that CO2, but they're offsetting the energy use as well, because we're not paying as much to cool buildings in the summer. They can also block wind in the winter and save us on heating costs in the winter too. They're also the air conditioner of the people, because they're just cooling the outdoor environment. They're cooling the streets. So anyone can go there. So it's an equity issue too with trees. We're cooling the area just for any person who lives there or who visits to come and enjoy that shade and be more comfortable on more days of the year. Now, trees also really give us health benefits, and this is hard to overstate how important this can be. But there have been studies that have shown that trees literally save lives. The heat, the cooling effect in urban areas has been studied and shown to increasing canopy in cities in Europe, it's projected that you could prevent 40% of the heat-related mortality in those cities, preventing a lot of early demise of people. And it gives also a reason to be active, be outside and enjoy and get some exercise. Aesthetic value, it calms us down with our mental health is improved by trees, though that's less understood why that is, but to me it doesn't matter. And they can also make us safer because it forms a barrier between us and the moving traffic, so that it protects the pedestrians. And air quality improvements that come from trees are massive as well. And in New York City, for example, the annual value, if you were to clean that same amount of air that the trees do using other methods, it would cost $5 million a year or so. So these things are really pretty serious benefits, and they're all worth money. But we're here to talk about stormwater, and we're zooming in on stormwater right here. So we have to think about how trees operate with water. Trees are both an object and an organism. In the urban environment, or in the built environment especially, trees have to be a sturdy, stable, supported, trustworthy object, because they're up over our heads. If they fall, that could be a real problem. So they're an object, but they're also an organism. So a lot of the benefits that we get from the trees come from the leaf mass of the trees, the leaf area. And part of that right here, you'll see the precipitation comes down, lands on the tree. There you go. It's stuck to the tree because it's just sitting on the leaf. It's as simple as that. It's intercepting precipitation. It holds water in that way just as well as a bucket does. So if you can imagine every bucket of water that you can keep from hitting the ground is another bucket of water that's not flooding your downtown area, or going through your storm drains, etc. So over here you'll see canopy and interception and evaporation. Those droplets can then float away into the air after they're sitting there, so they never end up reaching the ground. Stem flow is one of the factors that you'll see here, where the water kind of trickles down the stem, and every little crag and crack of bark slows that water down. So it's kind of adding to that storage capacity of the tree for water. Below the tree, you can see there's a green area. That's the pervious surface. Usually trees grow in some sort of pervious surface, such as grassland or forest floor. Pervious, in this case, you probably know this, but it just means water can pass through it, unlike pavement. So then you also have this element here of throughfall, where the water still comes through the tree. It still comes through, but when it does, it bounces off the leaves, it hits the stem, it drips, and it reduces the speed of those droplets. So when those are coming down at top speed and they hit exposed soil, it can splash, basically. And that splash moves soil away from where it was and can get it started moving down through the water. So slowing water down is kind of the name of the game for controlling some of these major stormwater problems. You also have evapotranspiration, which is uptake of water through the roots that then travels up through the stem, just like a straw, getting sucked up, and then it off gases from the leaves into the air. And that rate of how fast that happens really depends on the temperature, the amount of wind. Anytime you can imagine that your clothes would dry faster hanging on a clothesline, trees are also evapotranspirating more water at that time too. So it's weather dependent. And you have that infiltration down through the pervious surface down below into the soil. Another interesting thing that's actually not on this is that the roots underneath make that soil surface even more conducive for water to go downwards, because the sides, just like the stem flow of water following the stem, it can continue down and keep following those roots. And so the roots kind of create these channels along the side of the root that allows water to go even deeper into the soil that way. So this is just showing you interception. It's a simple thing. It is water that is stuck to the tree. All right. So this stuff here, if you'll take my meaning, is the stuff that's going on within the tree. Now we're going to look a little more about the land that the tree is on. So here we have a tree growing in a soil column, and you'll see that there's leaf litter. This is a forest. There's leaf litter on the top, and then there's a very dark organic matter filled layer of soil. And then in some cases in Vermont soils and other soils around the country, you'll see an E horizon, which is a sort of a bleached out soil layer that can be very whitish gray looking. And under that, you'll have an A horizon, which is sort of less organic matter, but still some organic matter. And under that, you may have a B horizon and a C horizon of soil. The C horizon is really the broken up bedrock, the bottom layer. And underneath that, you have the parent material, which is the bedrock underneath. This is pretty much the basic idea of soil. There, you could spend a lifetime studying soil, and I have not. But the basic idea with soil is it is alive. It has layers. There's movement of water up and down. There's movement of water. Like if water were to go down until it hits the bedrock, it can then flow along the bedrock. If there's a crack in the bedrock, it can go down. There's a lot going on in the soil. There's a lot of organisms. There's a lot of insects, microorganisms, fungus, and roots, plant roots. Not just tree, but all kinds of plants have roots. So the purpose of this slide is to show there's a sponge sitting there on the surface of this bedrock. That it's not just about the tree that's above ground, it's about the ground the tree lives in. That if you have a land use that is healthy for tree growth, then you also have a land use that's spongy for water, for the most part, in our neck of the woods anyway. Now, if we want to develop that land, the first thing we have to do is cut the tree down. And then we're going to scrape off the organic material, because if you want to build on this, organic material will never be stable. Even if you compact it, it'll still keep breaking down. And so whatever you're building on top will settle and crack, and we don't want that. So we scrape that away and all the roots. And then whatever's left, we compact with heavy machinery, compact it down. And then we pave it and we put whatever on it. In this case, a bench. So that's supposed to be a sidewalk panel, the bench on top. So one of the things that has always struck me too is how thin the pavement really is on top of the soil. That soil is still there underneath. It's not like when you're walking on the street, it's pavement all the way down. There's soil under there that if you open up that pavement, it can be alive again. But if you'll check it out, the reason why I'm going into all this is it's not just about a tree or not a tree, it's about land use. Left and right in this picture, two very different ideas of land use. One of them has a sponge with a big tree umbrella on top catching water. The other is extremely slick to water. Water will pour off of it without going into the soil at all. So the reason why we even have any issues with stormwater at all is because of this development process. Also agriculture. Agriculture contributes. But it's changing all this land, in the past used to be forest in Vermont. And, if you go back before settlement began, it was all forest for the most part. Take that away, you create this. So if you can understand what I'm trying to say, there's an opportunity cost. When you pave something, it's not just adding pavement, it's adding pavement while also taking away the tree and taking away the soil the tree lives in. So it's kind of a double whammy for stormwater. So I wanted to show you something interesting on Google time lapse. I just discovered this today. Is my screen showing a map now? Okay. All right. So this is the area of Williston, I think. Yep. This is Williston. So just kind of watch as we go through the years. Right now we're in 1984, 5, 86, 87. All right, we're starting to see in 88, you start to see quite a few more roads showing up in these fields. 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. All right, so in 95, we really started to see a bunch more buildings showing up. 96, we have quite a bit more stuff. 97, that all got turned into buildings. 98, 99, 2000, 1, 2. Pretty different now, huh? Till we get all the way to 2022. So that area, and now the fun thing is you can go straight back to 1984 and you can go between those two. You see that? That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing all over the world. So we have population growth. We have things we want to achieve. We have buildings we need to build. We have places to go, people to see. So no judgment there. It isn't a good thing or a bad thing, but that is what got us here. So what we have in one area, we have change over time. So by the time we're jumping into trying to work on stormwater right now, we have all of human history of development to work from. And we also have a net change. Like if you're trying to implement a stormwater solution at this time, it matters what you start from and where you end. It doesn't just matter what you put in. Same idea of that sidewalk versus that forest. If you change a forest to a sidewalk, that's a big net change. If you change a dirt road to a paved road, that's a smaller net change. If you change a paved road to a building, that's almost no net change. So the net is what's the net difference on the stormwater? Now, to think about it the other way, if you change a sidewalk to a tree, now you're getting somewhere. That's a big net change. If you plant a tree instead in a grassy field, going from grassland to tree, not a very big net change. So urbanization urbanizes. So the more we urbanize, the more we urbanize. So it's kind of that's the direction things go. So we are developing. As we develop, how do we incorporate trees? How do we get some of those tree benefits that we know are so valuable? We got some tree planting opportunities before us. Let's look at those real quick. I don't know. I put buildings there kind of weirdly, but these are some of these buildings, streets, new development, retrofit, parking lots, conserved land. These are all different places you might think to plant trees. Buildings don't work. You can't plant a tree on a building, really. You can actually, but it's kind of cost prohibitive, and I never see anyone do it in Vermont. Retrofit, installing a tree after into a street, you can certainly do it, but it's expensive. So a lot of times it gets canceled as a project because it's too expensive. People don't want to pay for it, even though it's a drop in the bucket compared to it's, chump change compared to like building a sidewalk or something. Conserved land, that is a very, very easy place to plant trees, but the net change is extremely small. The value of doing so on conserved land is so tempting because you think, okay, well, we're planting 100 trees. We're going to just put them in the ground real fast. Those trees are going to be so worthwhile. Well, those trees may have grown anyway just because it's conserved land. And this is an example of that. It may be someone from this picture is on this call. I'm actually not sure. This group, it's amazing what they did. This is a group of volunteers. They got together and they planted trees along this river. I think this is in Middlebury. You can see the small tree there that's like protected from beavers with this piece of fencing. All right, so this is a riparian planting. We know we need trees here to help stabilize the banks and help us out. And yet, what it already has is kind of that spongy soil. So the net change is a little bit less than if you were to go after a more ambitious project. Now, you have to do these projects. You can't only do the hard projects, but I just want to give you some new information you might not be thinking about. Planting one tree isn't the same as planting the other tree. There could be huge differences between the values of different tree planting projects. All right, here we go. We're planting it somewhere. There never would have been a tree here unless it was planted because this area is getting mowed. So this grass getting mowed is killing all the little seedlings before they grow. So disrupting that pattern to plant a tree is a little bit of a bigger net change than maybe planting in a wildland. And yet you still have some of that spongy soil there to work with. So the net change still isn't quite that big. Now over here, this is what I'm talking about. This is getting rid of a chunk of sidewalk to make a tree spot. This is in Montpelier. Pretty ambitious project. And look, you can see how thin the pavement is. I love that. You can see it's like a coat of paint on the surface of the ground. It isn't permanent. Nothing is permanent. You can just scrape it off and start over. And I think that's a lot of what we need to be doing. So urban forestry, in my mind, it's the work of excavators. It's the work of architects. It doesn't matter how well you understand which branches to cut. As I learned out of a tree, cutting branches out of a tree is great, but it doesn't do much if the tree is just strangled from below. All right, we got a blank one. So let's take a look. First of all, which one of these places would you rather go visit, go shopping? This is back to the idea that just trees are just simply good. And yet, I would argue these are two different land uses. If you look at this from above, this is fully paved on the left, and on the right, you've got it paved, but it's also got some trees. And having that trees elevated above the sidewalk, above the human uses of land, it's like green space on stilts, standing there above everything. It's like you have a park and the shopping center at the same time, which is what we need to do. We need to cram things together because when we're developing, there's so many demands for our space, and the more we allow our trees to be healthy, to be big, take the time to plant them, to prune them, get them in these places, Really see so many benefits. So in a parking lot scenario, we've got these designs. By the way, if you want to go out and look into urban forestry stuff, the problems of urban tree stress are solved. There, we could probably refine it, but the we know exactly how to give trees what they need in an urban environment. We know exactly how to avoid them from causing problems with infrastructure. It's all been solved. There's not it's not a mystery. It's a matter of will. It's a matter of getting it out there, paying for it, valuing it. This is an example of it being a known thing. This is in Vermont. This is in Montpelier. Um, these trees are in a parking lot, but look what's been created here. It's a stormwater treatment practice that's aesthetically pleasing. It gives us green space in the middle of a parking lot, but it's not that big. It's not causing any problems. If anything, it's just a help. And this is kind of what I'm trying to imagine for the future. This is something too above that in Minnesota, they have these amazing stormwater practices and stormwater manual that you can look at. It's a wiki, actually. You can search around through their stormwater manual. And this is one of their practices called a tree trench. Um, Pretty simple. It's planting trees, giving them soil. The soil absorbs the water, the trees grow. Couldn't be better. So let's get into why a certain tree is better than others in terms of stormwater. A large tree is like a large umbrella. Imagine walking down the street on the rain and your umbrella is just a really small umbrella, like for a child or something. You're still getting wet. You're still that umbrella doesn't have much benefit. So if you'll remember, I was saying that the tree, the biological functions of the tree, the misting, evaporation coming off of the leaves, the the leaves that absorb CO2, all that stuff is possible from the tree being alive. If you had an umbrella that was the same size as the tree, it actually is not as good at cooling the area as a tree is because the tree's alive and it has other effects besides just being an umbrella. But a large tree does a better job at intercepting rainwater than a small tree. So, what do we do with that information? You can imagine, well, from where I sit, you probably all have different ways of interacting with trees, and you're all here for a reason. You're all here to learn about this for a reason. So I know that you have some connection. I'd love to hear about it later, maybe in the question section. Like, what's your deal? But right here, from where I sit, there are a lot of pressures making trees smaller, and you have to fight tooth and nail to help them get bigger. Trees are never given enough soil. They are dealing with urban stress from soil compaction. They have higher levels of drought in urban situations. They have, people don't just like big trees because people are scared of big trees. They don't want them to fall. And so larger trees tend to get cut down just out of fear. Um, so, and also there, if you have overhead utilities, people want to plant really small trees under there, which is fair. But there's a lot of pressure pushing trees smaller. And when you think that one tree is equal to the other tree, you don't think it's a big deal to plant a small one instead of a big one. But the difference is massive. And I don't know if I kept the slide in there to show you that, but we'll see. So here's another same thing. So an unhealthy tree is like an umbrella full of holes. As you can see, now the tree is the same size from left to right, but it's not as healthy on the right. I kind of wish I didn't put those Smiley face is quite so much in the way, but you can imagine standing under here to try to get protection from the rain. Rain's going to be coming right through that busted up canopy, and it's going to be landing on you. And over here on the left, you just have a lot more cover. Now, again, it's the biological function of the tree that gives you the benefit for the most part. The biological function of a healthy tree is just way more robust. It's going on overdrive. It's just bursting with life, bursting with green vigor. And then over on the right, that tree is in decline, and each biological function it's trying to accomplish is stunted. So it's giving you less shade. It's taking up less water from the soil. It's doing less air exchange, and everything about it is giving you less benefit. What do you do with that information? So we have a lot of pressures. Similarly to the pressures making trees small, we do have pressures making trees unhealthy in similar ways that we need to fight against. I'm not saying all of our trees are unhealthy. I'm just saying there's a pressure that direction that we need to be aware of. Vehicles and people running into trees damages them. Road salt damages trees. People break them on purpose sometimes just with their hands when they're just messing around. Vandalism of other kinds. Poor pruning practices, and many other things. Construction that goes on near the tree that cuts off the roots in order to build something nearby. These things are just really putting a hurting on our trees sometimes, and when we do, we are paying a price. Another way that trees operate differently within the landscape of stormwater is conifers versus deciduous trees. Conifers holding onto their needles all throughout the year means they are an active stormwater absorber all year. Whereas the deciduous tree, when it loses its leaves, it loses a lot of surface area. That surface area would have held droplets of water. So the conifers are ready to go in those early spring rains when the leaves haven't come out yet on the other trees, and they're ready to go in the late. A couple years ago, we had a flood in December, and it was early December. We had a bunch of rain that came down, and our maple trees were doing their best, but all they had was that stem flow function. They didn't have all that interception that you can get from conifers. I've also seen numbers showing that conifers simply intercept more than deciduous trees. I've also seen the opposite numbers, so I don't know. But I think conifers are great for stormwater. All right. So I kept asking, what do we do with this information? Knowing that a large tree is better, knowing that a healthy tree is better, knowing that conifers and deciduous trees are a little different from each other, what do we do? So we have certain solutions to help these trees be big, to be healthy, and to be diverse. And by the way, I don't have a slide about this, but if I could state the obvious, 2 trees are better than 1. 3 trees are better than 2. Tree numbers do matter as well. Urban forestry solutions. So let's get simple here. A big, wide green strip. This is, if you can get away with this for an urban forestry solution, just go for it. It works. It's highly effective. Doesn't require a lot of engineering or anything like that. It's very flexible. When a tree dies, you can replace it easily. So yeah, and also it is a great pedestrian experience because you can have the front yard trees on one side, the street trees on the other side, and you're in a canopy, which everybody loves that. However, we do have more engineered solutions. So on the left, we have, remember that pit with the excavator going at it? This is this planting project produced this. This is in a different location, but it's the same construction method. This is after 1 year in the ground, 5 feet of growth. I actually got on a ladder and measured that. 5 feet of new growth. You can see the original shape of the tree from where it was from the nursery. So 5 feet of length. And over on this side, you can see a more traditionally planted street tree. Basically, it just has its own, it just has a little cutout in the sidewalk with a tree put in it, like a tree pot. This thing was in here for 7 years and only had 2 feet of new growth. So let's see. So 5 feet in 1 year, 2 feet in 7 years. I'm no mathematician, but I think that sounds a little bit better to have the faster growth. Which one costs more to do? Of course, the one on the left is more pricey. Those trees went in for about $12,000 a tree, if I remember correctly. The one on the right was basically only the cost of the tree itself, which is probably close to $500. But that tree on the right doesn't give you much benefit, and it's going to die sooner. It's going to have to be replaced. Longer lived trees, bigger trees, healthier trees, those are the things that matter for stormwater. A small tree that you planted cheaply is just that. It's not going to help you that much. Now, underneath this material that you see underneath the ground here, that's getting us as close as we can get to a forest soil in an urban setting. Well, there's other methods too, which I think I have a slide about. This is called a structural soil. It's very, very porous, very porous. So in between each of those rocks, there's pore space. And it's just wide open. It's like wide open country for those roots to go riding around in. And they're just finding little spots where there's water and there's air and that they have everything they need. But it's also structurally sturdy enough to support the sidewalk above. So this is another version of doing the same thing, but this gives you even fluffier soil cells. So if you can see on the right, we're looking at an actual framework underneath the soil. There's like stilts under the pavement. The pavement is sitting on top of the frame. That looks basically like stacked up milk crates. Those frames are full of puffy soil. That soil is just a sponge, just a total sponge, and it's really good for the trees. This is kind of the best you can get in terms of tree growth, is to have this type of a soil cell. This is, again, a schematic of what we built in Montpelier for that tree that was growing 5 feet a year. So these are available. This is a publicly available method. If you ever want to do it, just email me and help you out. Now, we also have some high value solutions for urban forestry that go a long way. On the left, bricks. Man, I put that on the top of the list for a reason. This is like having leaves on the top of the soil instead of a plastic sheet. Bricks allow water and air through, and that's all a tree asks for. Doing that alone is enough. Even if you keep the soil compacted, even if you don't do anything else for the tree, having bricks that actually do have a joint between them that water can get through, that tree will be much, much happier and healthier and bigger and help you more. Raised planting beds. So in this case, we have like a little raised planting box, which allows you to give soil to the tree without digging downwards, which can be a sticky wicket for some projects. Planting opportunistically when you're building something else. So if you're developing a sidewalk and you have this pavement already dug up, go ahead and put some of that structural soil in there, put some of those soil cells in there while it's opened up, because a lot of the cost of that project is paving it again. So if you have to pave it anyway, that's the moment. That's the moment to plant your trees. Now, in order to do that, you need rules in place. You need plans in place. You need a tree expert at the table while the transportation experts are talking. And it's hard to get that to happen. And that's what a lot of my behind the scenes work is all about. In this case, you'll see planting on the outer side of the sidewalk instead of on the street side. So that has a lot of benefits to it. From a tree pruning perspective, you only have to prune really one side of the tree. The shade of the building will sort of curtail the growth on the other side, and you do kind of need to watch out for that side of the tree too. But I think bigger trees can be grown there. We need a degree of cultural comfort with trees. Oopsies. On the left, that's Vermont right there. That's a brand new project. You can see that nice brand new level curb made of granite, and this nicely planted tree here, and you have this good iron grate around it to protect it. That tree is never going to reach another tree. That tree is never going to have an intermingled canopy with another tree. It's not close enough. It has to go around a corner and down the block to reach the next tree, which is over here. That's a cultural choice. Over on the right, this is New York City. I believe we can have this. I know we can have this. Over here, you have a sidewalk. You have a completely connected, continuous row of trees. Then you have a row of parking. Then you have 2 lanes of traffic, another row of trees, another parking lane, another sidewalk on the other side. So it's not like they're giving up much to do that. You still have both parking lanes, both driving lanes, both sidewalks in this picture. So let's make it happen, but we need to be culturally comfortable with it. I don't think, is that really the end? Okay, I will admit, I went right through and I was creating this today. I was so psyched to be able to talk to you guys about stormwater. I didn't come up with a big grand conclusion, but I would love to open it up for questions and hear what's on your mind and where you're coming from.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. That was a great presentation, very informative. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and turn on your mic and shout them out now, or drop them in the chat if you can't speak right now for any reason.
So I have a lot of issues with dead and dying ash trees on my property, and I've had to pay for the removal of 60 ash trees last summer, and I have a lot more on my property. That those were the ones that were at risk of damaging buildings and structures, mine and my neighbors. So it totally changed my acre and a half piece of property here, and I'm at a loss as to what to do at this point in terms of impacting, how, what to do next. I mean, I like the sunshine, that's good, but it's totally created so many other issues, and I don't know if that's an issue for urban sites as well, but it certainly, and I'm bordering on Lake Champlain, so all of those trees were within 100 feet of the lake that came out. So the issue is not just my property, but the lake as well. I don't know if you have any thoughts or suggestions, or if people are getting together to try to deal with this. I mean, I knew that this was emerald ash borer disease, and I knew that was coming for years and years and years. But I had too many trees to really inoculate safely or affordably. And so I just let nature take its course. Although over those years, whenever there was a little oak or a little maple coming up, I I made sure to put it someplace where it could grow and maybe take over, but pretty dramatic change, and I'm not sure quite where to go from here. If you have any thoughts on resources or who I can talk to about some of these issues.
Wow, that's some bad luck that you had that many ash trees to take down. Um, usually one homeowner won't have to deal with 60 or anywhere near that. So that's a heavy change.
Yeah.
I think you could, I mean, the key is, of course, to plant diversely. You want a variety of trees, so the next pest won't come in and just take all your new trees out again. You want a diversity of species. You want a diversity of ages too. So if you can have, do you have any trees left?
Yes.
Okay, so you can sort of interplant between those and try to start getting something to grow that's diverse. Now you don't have to plant large trees at this point if you have your overstory kind of thing. Um, and if you want to, I would plant in your case a lot of trees cheaply because I don't think you need. It sounds like you have a big area to cover. You don't need to amend the soil. The soil is ready to grow trees, so I think you could do it pretty cheaply. I wouldn't put in like bald and burlap trees that are 2 inches in diameter or something. I would get
Just little
some
ones.
little tiny things that are bare root and stick them in there. Yeah. So where are you? What? How? Where are you along the lake? It's a big lake.
Swanton, Swanton,
Okay.
Saint Albans.
The Intervale has great. Well, I guess I can't. Well, I think they're a nonprofit. I can't really endorse any particular nursery or something, but
Yeah.
you can look around and find some nurseries that grow native stuff.
Yeah.
Just plant them. Yeah.
It's just I'm also 76 years old, so I don't see me out there doing a lot of planting, although I have been. Said I'll do my best because a lot of the other trees that I have are buckthorn, so I don't really want those.
Mhm.
But I had the best vegetable garden I ever had in my life, so lots of new sunlight. So
Great question.
I actually had a question. Um, you were talking a lot about like urban plantings and the kind of wide green strips, and I guess I just wanted to know, like in your work, if you've been seeing more of these projects in like certain parts of Vermont, or if there's like if people are interested in doing them in general.
Yeah. There is interest around. I think it's gaining too. Um, the the tendency for projects of that sort, transportation projects or redevelopment projects, they tend to happen opportunistically. So they're not being driven by the trees, really. They're being driven by a broken up street that has to be replaced and upgraded and given some bike lanes and all these things that we love. Um, and in order to do that, sometimes you're losing a bunch of trees, but sometimes you're able to plant trees at the same time. And I think that one of the best projects that I've seen with it as of late is in Winooski, which redid their sort of whole Main Street. I think it is Main Street going up from the roundabout. And they did structural soil for all those trees that they just put in. They did take down all their old trees. And one of the interesting things, too, is even cutting down a big tree, replacing it with a small tree, you're still losing canopy. So you're thinking about that net change. But still, they did it the right way, and they took some time with it, and they planted a diversity of trees. I think I haven't seen which ones they chose, but so it's in the air. It's in the air. I think what it needs to be is brought up sooner in the project development phase of things. To have a town that wants trees writing down in their town plan that they want trees, so that as soon as, you know, the next town manager in 5 years is looking at the chance to do a street project, they're going to be able to look through that and see, okay, this town has already said they want trees, and so I can use that to advocate. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Are there any other questions?
Lorna, I'll jump in and just say, I guess, as a further to your point, Adam, not just the town plan, but in public works specifications. Because the question I was noodling on while you were talking had to do with the fact that in urban environments, trees are competing for space, not just with buildings, but with utilities like water lines and sewer lines. And I was just going to ask if you could recommend strategies that people that are advocates for trees could use to change the odds when there's a conflict, because it seems there's often a conflict, and when there is a conflict, trees usually lose because people see it as binary. So in your work experience, have you managed to find ways to get people to see that it isn't binary, that there's a way for utilities like water lines and sewer lines to somehow coexist with certain types of tree species and so on?
It's a great question, I can tell you've been in this game for a while if you're asking it. um, the the short answer is I'm looking for that solution. I'm looking for the way to convince, because everyone I talk to is in favor of the idea, and then as you're alluding to, eventually trees lose the argument and get cut from the project. And I think if you remember that slide where it showed the Vermont next to New York City, that's how you get that lone tree where the best they could do is, okay, well, we can't see around that corner, so we have to get rid of that tree. We can't be blocking that sign, so we have to get rid of that tree. We have a pipe here, so we have to get rid of that tree. Pretty soon you don't have any trees. So it's a tough needle to thread. I do have my ideas of how to have that argument, and the technical solutions are there. You can build the underground situation in different ways to exclude the roots from the pipes. Grouping all the pipes together as best you can, and then planting the trees a little further away is a good strategy if you're doing a whole redo of the street. A lot of the time it's a more piecemeal, so you kind of have to go with whatever utilities are already down there. So designing it to be separate a little more from the get-go is probably the best way. But if you can't do that, some of the arguments are trees intermingling with electrical wires underground is no big deal. I wouldn't even worry about that for a moment. So if anyone's trying to make that case, I would shoot that down. And there are things called root barriers that you can put underground that block roots from going and cracking pavement. And the pipes, the issue of roots intruding into pipes, I always blame that on the pipes, not the tree, because the roots are attracted to the leak of the pipe. They're coming into the bad joint in the pipe. They're coming into the crack. They're not going after a solid pipe. So you have to go down there and fix the pipe, do that first, and then see if the tree still has to be taken down. I'm working on a training called a tree nuisance framework, because what I have found is that the kinds of problems you're alluding to are tree nuisances. Arborists tend to think about the problems of trees as being tree risk. Basically, if the tree falls and hits something, that's kind of what arborists keep their eye on. But what people who are in transportation projects or development projects care about is what are the issues of the tree while it's growing healthy and alive. A healthy growing tree can still cause issues and problems. And those nuisances, I'm trying to create a training for non-arborist tree managers so that those nuisances can be managed more quickly, more easily, and cheaply, so that if they start to feel more comfortable with managing the trees they have, they might be more comfortable planting more. And also having those strategies for dealing with those nuisances built in to the design of where they're planted and stuff. So I think that's the central question of urban forestry in Vermont. How do you deal with the conflicts of space, maintenance, and a way trees get in the way of other maintenance we have to do?
Okay, thanks. Um, I realized that I hadn't added the links that I said I was going to. So if you're interested in our recorded webinars or some of the columns that Adam has written, I've put links to both of those in the chat and you can check them out really quick. If there's no other questions, then thank you, Adam, for your presentation. And thank you all for attending. And if you would like to attend, hopefully I'll see you at the next two webinars. We have rain gardens on the 23rd and microplastics with the Rosalia Project on April 7th. So yeah. But thank you, Adam. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.